Hello, friends. Welcome to the Peace and Power Ukraine podcast, a place to discuss all things related to Ukraine. As you know, Ukraine sits at the crossroads of modern history, and it's a place where East meets West and freedom meets totalitarianism. Thank you for joining us during these unprecedented times as we continue to see peace negotiations unfold across the world through negotiations in Rome and elsewhere. We always want to dig more deeply. We want to bring more light than heat. And today in particular, we want to bring a special kind of light, a different episode than we've ever done before. And we want to tell a simple soldier's story. So that's what we're looking forward to today. And we have as our guest today to do that, Greg. And Greg grew up in Northern California, but was born in Michigan. He served in the U.S. Army, and he just got back after serving for 3 years on the front lines in Ukraine. So we want to hear Greg's story today. Welcome, Greg.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, it's so exciting that you would be brave enough to come on and unpack your story for our audience as part of the Federal Newswire network. We have a lot of public policy officials, leaders, diplomats, grassroots folks from across the world who've listened to this, but they don't always have a perspective from the front lines. So tell us, where did this all begin for you? How did this journey start where you went from, Northern California all the way to the front lines in Ukraine?
Yeah, so as many people around the world saw the war unfolding in Ukraine on national television, it was something that I felt like I should do something. I felt like I should go and I should support in somewhere or another. And so I bought a plane ticket and I flew to Poland. And from Poland, I took a train into Ukraine, as did many others. It's kind of chaotic. And
was this right after the full-scale invasions? Somewhere February of 2022?
I arrived in Lviv on March 5th of 2022. So yeah, right after, as soon as I could possibly get there is when I showed up and met incredible people, terrified, obviously, unexpected circumstances at every corner. And
I can imagine it was a very chaotic time. There's refugees that are fleeing the country. There's a nation hanging in the balance. At that point, were the Russians on the doorsteps of Kyiv, or had they already been pushed out of the city? What was the front lines when you showed up?
Yeah. Actually, it was Bucha and Irpin was still heavily being fought in. I mean, it hadn't been long since the start of the invasion, and it was brief, the amount of time that Russian forces were at the doorstep of Kiev when I got there. That was a pretty hectic way of getting thrown into the middle of the war. It's just kind of you're there, you got jet lag, you're not really accustomed to the environment, you're not really understanding the language whatsoever, and where you can be most supportive of the
Right.
Ukrainian people. So yeah, it was pretty chaotic in the beginning, and it died down towards the end of March when it came to Kiev and Bucha and Irpin. That was a pretty chaotic way of getting thrown into the fight.
Right. And for you had some background in the U.S. Army, and you were trained to do what in the U.S. Army, and then is that what you came to Ukraine to do?
Yeah, so I enlisted in the actually it was in the Army National Guard. I enlisted in the Michigan National Guard as an infantryman, and I was in the Michigan Army National Guard for a brief amount of time before um, before moving on. And so I had the training, I had the understanding of what to do going in, and I just wanted to be supportive of the Ukrainian people. I found what Russia was doing crossing the border is um, inhumane, I think is the nicest way of putting it.
Right.
And
Did you have any family background connection to Ukraine? Is that something that's part of your ethnic heritage at all? Or this was just, you're a regular red-blooded American male who just said, I've got to serve, for such a time as this.
yeah, I don't really have any family ties to Ukraine or Eastern Europe that I'm aware of. I didn't really grow up having an understanding of my bloodline or heritage. Um, but I saw something that was wrong and I wanted to help. So,
Yeah. So it really was just a righteous anger. You saw something, I can't stand it, and I've got to step forward. If not me now, then who's going to step forward? So you had some background in the army, and you show up in Lviv. And then what's the process? Is there a foreign legion kind of recruiting unit? Is it even that organized, or what does one do to begin to get integrated into the fight?
yeah. So, um, I mean, this is very beginning of the war, right? Like they were in the process of trying to create the Foreign Legion, in Ukraine, and then you had the Georgian Legion there as well. So there was different people standing outside like the train station in Lviv that were recruiting people to join these legions, and there was a lot of groups that were coming over together for that purpose of joining the International Legion.
Okay, so the International Legion was at that point very new. Did it even have a unit number or insignia or anything at all? Clear commanding officer?
I don't know. I don't know. When I went in and I started fighting, I didn't actually fight under the International Legion. I wasn't fighting with a legion. I went in with a group of really experienced people, um, and started operating with those guys from the very beginning. That was short-lived before they left. They left at the end of the March, and I spent a month in Kiev training Ukrainian troops who had volunteered to enlist. Um, and so I spent about a month there with a few other foreigners who had came in after Russian forces pulled out of Bucha and Irpin and back into Belarus. Things had kind of calmed down in Kiev and in that region. So they gave people an opportunity to kind of brush the dust off and pick up what little they could pick up and figure out their bearings. From there, a lot of Ukrainians, without without any understanding of war, were like, okay, well, let's fight. And as foreigners, we're coming together. This is still very beginning of the war. Everything's chaotic. There's a lot of confusing things that are happening. Um, Things haven't really been put into place well enough. So uh, you're going into war, and unlike military service traditionally, you're going into war with people you don't know. You're going into war with languages you don't speak. And trust is an important factor of that. And so finding a group of people that you can learn to trust very fast or have some semblance of that can be stressful, and something that everybody at that point was looking for.
Well, I just want to say thank you for being willing to share some of this story. And we do understand that we want to keep, names and specifics out of this for security purposes as much as possible. You initially served with a group of Americans, but then it sounds like, that you said that group went back to the States, and then you really did end up serving with Ukrainians, and you had language barriers, you had trust experience issues that you had to get through. How did that happen for you? Did you have to quickly try to piece together the language, or did a lot of the, especially the younger folks, I guess, know English?
Yeah. So, well, this is the interesting thing about Ukraine. So, a lot of countries, U.S. included, right? Like, if we were to enact a draft, um, or there was a war, like 9/11, right? It wasn't 60-year-olds, 70-year-olds that were volunteering to join the military. It was 18, 19-year-olds. Our younger generation goes to war before our older generation. In Ukraine, it's different. The older generation goes first. It's not that the military requires it. It's that in their culture, traditionally older people will go to protect the younger people. They've had a longer life. They want to make sure the kids have that same opportunity. So, I yes, this statement that younger generation Ukrainians have a better understanding in English is true. But the majority of the time, at the beginning, I mean, you're fighting with their parents and their grandparents, even in some cases, who have volunteered to enlist to fight to protect um, their younger populace, younger generations.
So comparatively, you were a lot younger then.
For some for the majority, yeah, majority of the guys that I was working with, I was younger. There,
Right.
obviously there were some guys my age, and there were some guys younger than me. But typically it's the older generation that picks up arms, and also they have a better understanding.
Hmm.
Soviet Union fell in 91,
Right.
if I'm not mistaken. So like they understood what it was like to live during the Soviet Union. They understood um, the implications a lot better than younger generations as well. They had a better understanding what they were fighting for.
Right. So it sounds like you did overcome the language barrier to build trust. And were you then wearing a Ukrainian army uniform as part of the unit you were in?
Um, yeah. Well, I mean, multicam is typically what I wore. Um, Ukraine has an interesting. Um, there's a reason why they wear tape on their arms. Especially at the beginning of the war, there were so many people. I think, and maybe I'm very wrong. But there's I don't know 30,000 people in the Ukrainian military before the war started.
Right.
Um, and within months there's what 1 million. So uh, not even the U.S. I think could be able to logistically handle such a large increase in war fighters joining their forces. So uniforms weren't even available to the majority of people. Right, people were buying from private stores and from open markets, whatever they could get their hands on. So there was a lot of mixed matched
Okay.
uniforms.
So explain to our audience that might not be as familiar. What does tape on the arm mean?
Oh, so it's an identifier. So Russian forces, they'll have red, or they'll have white armbands. Essentially, it's tape or cloth or whatever they decide to utilize as an identifier that they are um, Russian forces to prevent friendly fire. So Ukrainians do the same thing because maybe I'm wearing multicam and the guy next to me is wearing BDU. So it's just like uh, older older camouflage pattern. We don't look the same whatsoever. The only thing that's able to identify us as friendly forces in Ukraine is a name tape or like an arm tape,
Hmm.
something that it identifies that we're fighting on the Ukrainian side. Um, so yeah, it's to signify who you're fighting for.
Hmm.
Um, there's also tape. We would tape our helmets, we would tape our arms, we'd tape our legs, like um, sometimes green, sometimes blue, sometimes yellow. And these were the colors that Ukrainian forces would use to identify other friendly forces.
That's really helpful for some of our American audience. They might think back to our American Civil War, and the Southern troops in particular were irregular forces. They did not have set uniforms. That gray didn't come until later, especially early in the war. Where the Union, they had a big industrial manufacturing base and had regimented uniforms that was much more clear. So it sounds a little bit like that situation where, you're hodgepodge building this army as you went. Now it sounded like you were doing training for a while, but when in your service did you go from training maybe to more of a frontline scenario? And then can you help our audience understand what is the zero line and the variations of when somebody says I'm at the front lines?
Um, yeah, so I spent Bucha and Irpin was quite interesting. When I first arrived, I kind of just jumped right into fighting. I was there for a short amount of time before Russian forces pulled out. So my first experience was going to fight, and and that was pretty chaotic. Um, I probably should have waited till I had a better understanding and better bearings of where I'm at, what I'm doing. But I met some incredible people who were both foreigners and Ukrainians from various different countries that essentially said, "Hey, if you can keep up, you can hang." So
Mm-hmm.
um, they taught me a lot in the short amount of time that I was there with them. I then spent about a month in Kiev training Ukrainian forces on basic infantry tactics, ready up drills, basic formations, and just how to um, well, first properly and safely use a firearm because a lot of these guys that are going in don't have the opportunity to get decent training. It's the beginning of the war. There wasn't really anything set up at that point. May Day of 2022, I ended up in Kharkiv. I met with a Swedish gentleman who who had been planning to go support a Ukrainian unit in Kharkiv,
And that's
and
the far eastern side of the country for
yeah,
those that are listening. So you've gone from the capital way out to where the front lines still are today.
yeah, yeah. Um, so we went there, spent about 3 days training forces, Ukrainian forces, in Kharkiv, and then from there went straight to Zero Line. Zero Line is the front line. That's you have your troops, then you have Russian troops, and you're shooting at each other, whether it's through IDF. This is when drones started becoming apparent, or small arms fire, or vehicles, tanks, BMPs, and other armored troop transport vehicles, technicals. It could be a pickup truck with a machine gun, a 240 or whatever type of variant mounted to it. And yeah, so Zero Line is not a fun place to be. That's where people are shooting at you and you're shooting back. That's the front lines.
Yep. And how long would you serve at the front line before you rotated out? Was there kind of a systematic understanding of, okay, I've got to get through a week, or I need to get through a month, and then I'll have some time to recuperate and then back? What did that look like?
So with a group of guys that I was fighting with in the Kharkiv, they're pretty advanced in their knowledge. Um, I was there for a short amount of time with a newly formed Ukrainian unit, guys that we had spent about 3 days training, and went forward deployed with them to Zero Line. From there, we spent about 8 hours getting shelled in a tree line while we were getting ready to advance and take back a Ukrainian village. Um, I ended up running into some of the Ukrainians who I had worked with in Bucha. From there, I ended up linking up with those guys. They're pretty efficient in their knowledge and understanding of warfare. So I essentially spent the rest of 22 with them until getting injured in November.
And what did that experience of a first injury, um, you know, you obviously overcame it and then continued to serve on, but what was the shock of that like? And if you can share, what did happen when you were injured on the front line?
I yeah, so I got shot. Huh, I guess is the easiest way of putting it.
Mm-hmm.
I was wearing body armor and they fortunately my plate was able to stop the rounds that hit me. Um, my initial thought was that I'm gonna die. I just got shot 3 times and uh it's very uncomfortable. Um, and then you kind of come to peace with what you think is inevitable. You've seen a lot of death,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't know. I think I was grateful not to be dead. I guess is the
All right.
best way of putting it. It's grateful.
So you took multiple rounds, but at some point you realize, while I'm injured, okay, my buddies are working on me, or we're going to be able to stop the flow of blood, and I am going to make this, or they pull me back. What does that process and that moment look like?
Yeah. So I got pulled back. I got lucky. Like I said, the rounds were taken by the plate that I was wearing, so they didn't actually puncture my skin. They did break ribs. I had a concussed right lung.
Mm-hmm.
Um, my guys helped me to my feet, and I'm thinking that those rounds were not stopped because it was a very short, close distance from where I was shot and where I took the rounds. So I was thinking, okay, yeah, my plate didn't work, and from there, yeah, my team picked me up. They helped me on my feet, and we got back to our vehicle. We were getting ready to exfil, leave that area, head back to the rear. I was throwing my equipment in the back of the truck and ended up having my foot ran over, so that my foot was shattered too. And
Oh.
and then that took a little while to heal. I ended up getting back safely. My team got back safely, and I learned later on that yeah, I learned later on that I was good. I didn't really have the time um to check myself. It was a matter of just
Right.
getting out of that situation.
So you end up having to leave the front line, though, and get your foot healed up, and you've got some fractured ribs. So what does that look like then? All the way back to Kyiv, or back somewhere closer? Because the Russians still target hospitals, even with their glide bombs and their missiles and drones. How does one go recuperate but safely recuperate?
I spent about 2 days in a Ukrainian hospital, military hospital in Kharkiv um, before being released from that hospital. And yes, hospitals are absolutely um, targeted, whether civilian or not. Um, I mean, as a matter of fact, I helped clean up the debris from the children's hospital that was hit in Kiev not too long ago. So
Yeah, I had a chance to take an American delegation to that hospital, Greg, in December. And we saw the pictures, we saw the devastation from that Russian attack. And it's real. This is not just, somebody saying this is what the Russians do. I saw it with my own eyes. I still see the collapsed building, touch the debris and the broken bricks and the metal. So yeah, that was unbelievably, a moving experience for me. I can't imagine what it was like for you to be there.
I mean, I'm more thinking about the Ukrainians. Look, I'm a foreigner. I have the ability to come and go as I please. Um, Ukrainians don't, right? It's not a situation where they really have an option or a choice. It's something that there needs, unfortunately, they have to find some type of normalcy in war in
Mm-hmm.
order to continue on. Um, and It was devastating seeing a children's hospital bombed, but it wasn't the first one. And the mindset of the people that I spoke to while they're helping to clean up the rubble and and try and find people was, uh, okay, when's the next rocket going to hit us as we're
Mm-hmm.
trying to clean this up?
Because that is a tactic, right?
Yeah,
As I understand it,
absolutely.
the rescuers go in, and then the Russians, they have a second wave to hurt those who are involved in the rescue mission.
Yeah, the idea that the Russians have is let's cause as much chaos and let's murder as many people as we can. Because at that point, I mean, who bombs the children's hospital?
Right. Yeah, I can understand if it was a military hospital and they could you almost create a justification of, okay, these are the guys that have been fighting and killing our Russian soldiers, so we don't care where they're at, we're going to attack and kill them. It still violates all the laws of international, Geneva Convention and so forth to be attacking a hospital. But you can almost come up with an understanding of how they could rationalize that, but not a children's hospital in downtown Kyiv. I mean, just it's beyond the pale. So tell me a little bit more about you're back and you were, go through this recovery process. This was the first moment where I would think you might have had enough time to say to yourself, do I want to continue? Do I want to go put myself in harm's way again? I've just survived a near life and death experience. Was there a moment where you thought, I'm just going to pull the plug, I'm going back to the U.S. and, did family encourage you to do that? Did they know about your injuries and then, have a feeling or put pressure one way or the other?
So I kind of kept my injuries to myself when it came to relaying information back here stateside to friends and loved ones. It didn't encourage me to go home for the purpose of being done. It motivated me to continue to fight and push forward more. There's incredible people whose story can't be told because they're no longer here to tell it. I think one of my responsibilities as somebody who was lucky and survived is to help keep their names and their stories alive. Ukrainians are the type of people who, if they don't have a shirt on their back, they'll make you one, and they'll give it to you. I'm here because I'm lucky. I'm not here because I'm good, and you don't have to speak the same language to be able to communicate the look that you see in people's faces, and the fear, the gratitude.
Mm-hmm.
That's universal.
Yeah, I can see that from your reaction. You experienced that firsthand. That humanity that transcends any cultural background, any language background. You serve side by side with somebody at the zero line, and it's truly changed you. And I know that the Ukrainian people are very special people, but they've experienced special leaders and American friends like you that have come alongside them. And, to have that experience go from, we're just up to your first year of service, and you ended up serving a full 3 years until February of this year. Is that correct?
Yeah. So I went home for a month at the end of 22. I came back beginning of 23. I actually started working with an NGO beginning of 23 because I was still healing from injuries that I had sustained. So I started doing work with an NGO and trying to support friends and people I had met for a while. Once I was good to go, I enlisted with a GOR unit and I was with them for a short amount of time before going home to take a bit of break. Had lost a lot of people, and 23 people I was close with. Went home
Mm-hmm.
for a couple months and then returned in 23. 24 spent almost all of fighting in Zaporizhia. Ended up becoming a company commander in a Ukrainian unit, and lost a lot more guys. And I think that's when I hit that point you're asking about earlier.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Did that make you want to go home? No. At the beginning, no. When I first got injured, I still had a lot of friends out there fighting. Um, I came home when there wasn't really any friends left out there fighting.
You have given so much, more than anyone would have ever asked. And again, for a country that is not your own, but it's a shared people that we're fighting for and that you were fighting for, a people with a shared set of values. They are truly a Western country, a country that's full of people of great faith. That's what I've experienced. I'm from the American South right now, and I tell a lot of people, if you want to understand the Ukrainians I've met, they're a lot like the good people in the South, and I'm sure the good people maybe of more rural Michigan and Big Ten country there that you've experienced, but they would be people that you'd identify with, and that you'd be willing to fight alongside when you're fighting against totalitarianism and the face of evil that Putin has brought. And, I want to say thank you on behalf of Americans that support Ukraine and understand the real nature of this fight. It's been so valuable that you've been willing to share some of your story. We just wanted to hear today and help our audience understand when they might be caught up in the daily negotiations of geopolitical strategy between Putin and Trump. Had a phone call. What's the reality? What's really happening at the front line, at the zero line? And I appreciate you sharing that with us today. As we close out, if there's one thing that you'd like to share that you didn't get a chance to make sure that our audience understands about your story, or maybe the broader soldier story, what might it be, Greg?
I got the one thing that I'll never have the opportunity to share enough about would be my brothers and sisters who've died, who gave their lives. American, British, Ukrainian, people from all walks of life, all parts of the world, came to Ukraine to support a good cause. The back and forth when it comes to politics and phone calls and conversations for us that aren't living in Ukraine, it's just another phone call for Ukrainians. It's terrifying and anxiety causing, and people want this war to end. We've all lost a lot of really good people.
Yep. Well, thank you so much. That's a great place to end for today. Remembering those we've lost and wanting to understand the band of brothers and sisters that you served alongside of. They were lost for the cause of peace. And we all joined together praying for peace in Ukraine and praying that there'll be hope in the near future. The guns will be silent. Maybe by Christmas, maybe there'll be a miracle for peace that we don't understand. But I think all of us are praying for that today. So thank you, Greg, for sharing your soldier story. And we appreciate all of you for joining this very special episode of Peace and Power Ukraine. And we'll see you next time.